Brian's heart pounded as he clutched the boarding pass. His first-class ticket, a hard-won symbol of independence after years of hiding. But as he approached his seat on the flight from New York to San Francisco, a burly man in a tailored suit was already settled in, barking into his phone about those types ruining everything. When Brian politely pointed out the mistake, the man sneered, "Kid, seats like this aren't for boys like you," his voice dripping with disdain that cut deeper than any knife. Brian froze, the words hitting him like a gut punch. He was 19, fresh out of high school, and this trip was supposed to be his escape, to finally meet Jamie in person after months of secret online conversations that had blossomed into something real, something that made his world feel less suffocating. But now, this stranger's homophobic glare made him question everything. Was he really ready to step into the light, or was this a sign to crawl back into the shadows? The flight attendant approached, her smile forced as she checked tickets. But the man, Mr. Harrington, as his name tag read, waved a hand dismissively. "I upgraded last minute. This boy's probably in coach." Brian's cheeks burned, not just from embarrassment but from the rage bubbling inside. Why did he always have to prove his worth? Back home in conservative Connecticut, his father had drilled into him that success meant fitting the mold: straight, strong, silent. Coming out wasn't an option. It was career suicide in their family of lawyers and politicians. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. "Ma'am, this is my seat. I paid for it." The attendant scanned his pass, nodding apologetically. "Sir, there seems to be a mix-up. Mr. Harrington, you'll need to move to 2A. Harrington's face twisted in fury. "You kidding me? I don't sit next to whatever this is." He gestured vaguely at Brian, who felt his stomach drop. Passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others pretending not to notice. Brian's mind raced. Should he back down to avoid a scene, or stand his ground, knowing it could escalate? The decision weighed on him like lead. Every choice in his life had been about survival, about not rocking the boat. But Jamie's words echoed in his head. "You deserve to be seen, Brian. Don't let them dim you." As the argument heated, Harrington stood, towering over Brian. "Listen, kid, in the real world, people like me call the shots. You think you can just prance in here?" The slur hung in the air, unspoken but implied. Brian's fists clenched. He wanted to scream about the nights he'd cried himself to sleep, about the friends who'd abandoned him when rumors spread, about the father who praised his straight-A report cards but ignored the bruises from school bullies. Instead, he said quietly, "I'm just trying to get to San Francisco. Please." The attendant called for backup, and soon a supervisor arrived, diffusing the tension temporarily by relocating Harrington to another first-class seat. But as Brian sank into his rightful place, he couldn't shake the shame. Why did his existence provoke such hate? Was love really worth this constant battle? The plane taxied, and Brian pulled out his phone, rereading Jamie's last message. "Can't wait to hold you. Be brave." Jamie, 20, a college student in the Bay Area, had been his lifeline since they connected on a discreet app for LGBTQ youth. Their talks had delved deep, Jamie's own struggles with a religious family, Brian's fear of disappointing his dad. But now doubt crept in. What if this trip exposed him? His father, Senator Elias Grant, was up for re-election, and any scandal could tank the campaign. Brian had hidden his orientation masterfully, dating girls in high school to keep up appearances, but the toll was immense. Sleepless nights wondering if he was broken, if God or fate had cursed him. The engine roared, lifting them into the sky, and Brian closed his eyes, whispering a silent prayer for strength. Mid-flight, turbulence hit, mirroring the storm in Brian's mind. He glanced across the aisle where Harrington sat, glaring daggers. The man was on his laptop, typing furiously, and Brian caught a glimpse of emails. Something about dealing with threats and silencing voices. Paranoia? Or real? Brian shook it off, focusing on the future. Landing in San Francisco meant freedom, a chance to explore who he was without judgment. But freedom came at a cost. He'd lied to his family about the trip, saying it was a college visit. If they found out, he imagined his father's face, the disappointment turning to rage. "No son of mine," he'd say, echoing the words Brian had overheard years ago about a distant cousin. A ding from the overhead speakers interrupted his thoughts. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed to return to the gate. Please remain seated." Murmurs rippled through the cabin. Brian's pulse quickened. What now? The plane banked sharply, descending back to JFK. Harrington bolted up, arguing with the crew. "This is ridiculous. I have meetings." But security was waiting on the tarmac. As the doors opened, FBI agents boarded, heading straight for Harrington. "Robert Harrington, you're under arrest for fraud and hate crimes." The man's face paled as they cuffed him. Reading rights. Brian stared, piecing it together. Had his confrontation triggered this? No, it was bigger. Whispers spread. Harrington was a big-shot exec involved in embezzlement, and his company had been under investigation for discriminating against LGBTQ employees. In the chaos, an agent approached Brian. "Son, your report might have helped. We were tracking him." Report? Brian hadn't reported anything. Then it clicked. The flight attendant must have flagged the incident. As passengers deplaned, Brian felt a mix of relief and terror. This delay meant missing his connection to Jamie, but more, it exposed him. Reporters swarmed the terminal, cameras flashing. Teen stands up to bigot on flight. FBI intervenes. His face would be everywhere. His father would see. The weight crushed him. Was standing up worth destroying his family? Back in the airport lounge, Brian paced, phone buzzing with missed calls from home. He answered his father's. "Brian, what the hell happened? The news is blowing up." Elias's voice was a storm. "Dad, It wasn't my fault." But explanations fell flat. Elias demanded he return home immediately. "We can't have this tarnishing the name." Brian's heart shattered. Tarnishing? His identity was a stain. Tears welled as he thought of Jamie, waiting in vain. The choice loomed. Obey and hide, or fight and lose everything. Brian slumped into a chair in the airport, the fluorescent lights buzzing like accusations overhead. His father's words echoed, "Come home now or don't come back at all." The ultimatum hung heavy, forcing Brian to confront the fractures in his soul. For years, he'd built walls to protect himself, but now they were crumbling, exposing the raw ache of wanting to be loved for who he was. Jamie's texts flooded in. "Where are you? Flight delayed." Brian typed and deleted responses, the truth too painful. How could he explain that one act of defiance had unraveled his life? He boarded the next available flight, economy this time, his first-class dreams dashed. The hours in the air were torture, his mind a battlefield of what-ifs. What if he'd let Harrington keep the seat? Would he still be en route to Jamie's arms, to that first kiss that promised acceptance? Or was this fate's cruel joke, reminding him that happiness for someone like him came with strings attached? Guilt gnawed at him. Guilt for potentially ruining his father's campaign, for being the son who didn't fit the perfect picture. Elias had sacrificed everything for politics. Long nights, missed birthdays, all to build a legacy. And Brian? He was the heir apparent, groomed for law school, for continuing the Grant dynasty. But deep down, he knew the truth would shatter that illusion. Landing in San Francisco felt like stepping into a foreign land. The fog rolled in, mirroring his clouded thoughts. Jamie waited at arrivals, his face lighting up until he saw Brian's expression. "What happened?" Jamie pulled him into a hug, the warmth a stark contrast to the cold rejection brewing back east. They drove to Jamie's dorm in silence at first, then words tumbled out. Brian recounted the flight, the arrest, the media frenzy. Jamie listened, his hand on Brian's knee. A simple touch that sent sparks, but also fear. "You did the right thing," Jamie said. "Standing up matters." But did it? Brian wondered, staring out at the Golden Gate Bridge. The price was his family's trust. That night, in Jamie's tiny room, they talked until dawn. Jamie shared his own scars. Disowned by his evangelical parents at 17, living on friends' couches until scholarships saved him. "It hurts, but freedom is worth it," he insisted. Brian envied that conviction. His own doubts swirled. Was love selfish if it destroyed others? The media had dubbed him a hero, but heroes didn't cry over lost approval. As Jamie's fingers traced patterns on his back, innocent, comforting, Brian felt a pull toward authenticity, but the anchor of duty held him back. Morning brought more chaos. Brian's phone exploded with notifications. Articles linking him to the scandal, outing him indirectly. Senator Grant's son involved in airborne altercation, LGBTQ angle emerges. His sister, Mia, called in tears. Dad's furious. Mom's not speaking. What were you thinking? Mia, 22, had always been his confidant, suspecting his secret but never pushing. Now her voice cracked with worry. They're saying you're, you know. Brian's throat tightened. It's true, Mia. I'm gay. The admission, spoken aloud, felt like shedding chains, but the silence that followed was deafening. I love you, she whispered finally. But Dad, he's calling a family meeting. You need to come home. The decision tore at him. Stay with Jamie. Embrace this new life, or return to face the music. Jamie urged him to fight. Your family's wrong, not you. But Brian saw the gray areas. Elias wasn't a monster. He was a product of his era, raised in a world where difference meant weakness. Betraying that by staying away felt like abandonment. Yet leaving Jamie felt like self-betrayal. They spent the day wandering the city, hands linked defiantly, but Brian's mind raced with moral quandaries. Was hiding ethical to protect loved ones, or cowardly? The sun set over the bay, and Brian made his choice. He'd go home, explain, try to bridge the gap. Jamie's eyes filled with hurt. Don't lose yourself for them. The goodbye kiss was bittersweet, a promise laced with uncertainty. On the red-eye back, Brian drafted a letter in his mind, a coming-out manifesto. But doubt crept in. What if it backfired? Landing in New York, he headed straight to the family estate in Connecticut. The grand house loomed, a symbol of expectations. Elias waited in the study, face etched with lines deeper than Brian remembered. Sit, he commanded. No hug, no worms. Explain yourself. Brian's voice trembled as he recounted the events, skirting his orientation at first. But Elias cut in. The press is hinting at things. Is it true? The question hung, a precipice. Brian met his father's eyes. Yes, Dad. I'm gay. The room exploded. Elias paced, ranting about disgrace, about voters, about legacy. Do you know what this means? Years of work, down the drain. Brian's heart ached. Not for the anger, but for the absence of concern for him. What about me? Doesn't my happiness matter? Elias stopped, his face softening momentarily, then hardening. Happiness? This is a choice, Brian. Fix it or you're out. The ultimatum echoed his earlier call, but now face to face, it stung deeper. Brian thought of Jamie's strength, of the flight's lesson. Silence enables hate. I can't fix who I am, he said, standing. As he walked out, the door slamming behind him, regret mingled with liberation. Had he just burned his bridges for good? The days blurred into a haze of isolation. Brian crashed at Mia's apartment in the city, her small space a refuge from the storm. But even there, the weight pressed down. Media hounded him. Hero or troublemaker? Grant's son's stand sparks debate. Reporters camped outside, shouting questions about his sexuality, his family. Each flashbulb was a reminder of the cost. Privacy shattered, identity commodified. Inside, Brian wrestled with betrayal. Not just his father's, but his own for years of pretense. Nights were the worst, alone with thoughts that screamed. Why couldn't he be normal? Why did love demand such sacrifice? Mia tried to mediate, calling Elias daily. He's your son, Dad. Talk to him. But Elias stonewalled, channeling energy into damage control. Polls showed his approval dipping among conservatives, but curiously rising with progressives. The irony burned Brian. His pain fueled his father's pivot to family values with compassion. In interviews, Elias dodged direct questions, saying, "Personal matters stay personal." Hypocrisy at its finest. Brian seethed, imagining confronting him on live TV. But confrontation meant more exposure, more judgment from society that preached tolerance but whispered slurs. Jamie called every hour, his voice a lifeline. "Come back, Brian. We can build something here." The temptation was intoxicating. A life free from expectations, where holding hands didn't invite stares. But roots ran deep. Abandoning family felt like moral failure. Brian's mind looped. Was loyalty to blood obligatory, even when it poisoned you? He scrolled through old photos. Family vacations, Elias beaming at his graduations. Those memories clashed with the present, creating a rift in his soul. "I miss you," Jamie said one night, "but I won't beg. Choose us." The pressure mounted, decisions branching into futures fraught with loss. A bombshell dropped midweek. Harrington's trial revelations. The exec hadn't just embezzled. He'd orchestrated a campaign against LGBTQ rights in his company, firing employees based on orientation. Brian's incident was cited as evidence of his bigotry. Subpoenaed as a witness, Brian faced another crossroads. Testify and cement his out status, or decline and let injustice slide. The moral quandary gnawed. Silence had protected him before, but at what cost to others? He thought of kids like him hiding in shadows. Testifying meant honoring them, but betraying his father's plea to stay out of it. Elias showed up unannounced at Mia's, his face haggard. "We need to talk." No apology, but a crack in the armor. They sat in tense silence before Elias spoke. "I don't understand this choice." Brian exploded. "It's not a choice. It's me." Tears flowed as he poured out years of suppression. The bullying, the loneliness, the fear of rejection. Elias listened, stone-faced at first, then softening. "I thought I was protecting you. The world is cruel. But protection felt like erasure. By making me hide?" Brian challenged. Elias admitted faults. His own upbringing in a rigid household, where emotions were weaknesses. "I love you, son, but this changes everything." The admission was a sliver of hope, but laced with conditions. Keep it quiet until after the election. The offer tempted Brian. Reconciliation for discretion. But integrity screamed no. "I can't live a lie anymore." Elias left, defeated, muttering about consequences. That night, Brian decided he'd testify. The courtroom loomed, an arena for his truths. Jamie flew in for support, their reunion charged with emotion. "I'm proud," Jamie whispered, hand in hand as they entered. Harrington glared from the defense table, but Brian stood tall, recounting the flight with steady voice. His words weren't just rude. They were hate. The testimony rippled, media amplifying it. Backlash hit. Hate mail, threats from extremists, but also support letters from queer youth thanking him. Post-trial, Elias called a press conference. Brian watched from Mia's couch, heart in throat. "My son is gay," Elias announced, voice breaking. "And I'm proud of him." Shockwaves. Was it genuine or political? Brian's phone rang. "Elias. I mean it. Come home." Tears streamed as Brian drove back, hope flickering. But arrival revealed layers. Elias's team had spun it as growth, boosting polls. Betrayal stung anew. Was this for me, or votes? Brian demanded. Elias hesitated. Both. But I see now the pain I caused. The confession cracked something in Brian. Forgiveness budding amid hurt. Yet doubt lingered. Could trust rebuild? Jamie's visit extended, but tension brewed. "Your family's pulling you back," he accused. Brian defended. "They're trying." The argument escalated, words like weapons. "Choose, them or us." Jamie's ultimatum mirrored Elias's, forcing Brian to confront divided loyalties. Love versus family, why couldn't he have both? As Jamie packed to leave, Brian's heart fractured. "Stay," he begged. But Jamie shook his head. "Not if you're half in." The door closed, echoing finality. Alone, Brian questioned everything. Had his choices led to more loss than gain? The void left by Jamie consumed Brian. Days turned